Hi, folks. Welcome to Ask an Educator. This week we are tackling the parent and caregiver question. How do I know if my child is getting a good education? This one is a doozy. Um, Sorry, it said I need to close some applications. Got it. Um, yeah, doozy. So, first of all, I would say we need to define what we think a good education is. This can be subjective for some parents and caregivers. A good education might involve a religious aspect. It might involve some kind of a science-based curriculum, a play-based curriculum, Montessori, Reggio Emilia. So the first step in knowing how our child is getting, or if our child is getting a good education, is just thinking about how we define a good education. What is important to us as parents and caregivers? Now, if we flip to the objective side of this, the U.S. Department of Education has laid out some qualifiers for an effective school, and I think that relates to how we might define a good education. So, in my notes, according to the U.S. Department of Education, there are high expectations. There is a great teaching staff. There are busy children. I thought that one was interesting because busy doesn't always mean effectively working, but whatever. Rigorous curriculum. So they define an effective school having rigorous curriculum. The word rigorous to me is overused, and everybody has a different definition. So I just want to qualify that. A vibrant parent and teacher association, and parents are welcomed and their questions are answered. So that's according to the U.S. Department of Education. So there are a few things that I would add. I've had a chance and an opportunity as an educator to work in schools in public education, to work in higher education, to work with the Florida Department of Education, to work with the National Network of State Teachers of the Year, to work with the University of Central Florida, with Mount Holyoke College, and to get inside a lot of schools. And now in my role at the community classroom, I get to talk to a lot of families and get insight into a lot of our schools. So things I would add for how do we know if our child is getting a good education? First, I would say it is much, much more than just test scores. Assessments are great at giving us information and informing instruction and seeing where there's gaps and where there are strengths. That's an awesome piece of assessment. But one thing I would caution you as a parent, as a caregiver, is don't judge a school based on its grade. In Florida, we have this grading system where schools are given A, B, C, Ds, and do not judge a school by those grades, period. End of story. So if you're looking to buy a home, don't judge a school. If the realtor is telling you, oh, this has an A school, well, just don't, not that they're wrong, but take their advice with a grain of salt, because sometimes we have those really great A schools, and they are great schools, and kids are happy, teachers are happy, things are humming along, everybody's learning. And sometimes we just have A schools that the kids test really well, but maybe there's not really a good education happening inside that school. I've worked at C schools and D schools, and those have been some of the like A plus 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 best educations that I've seen. So know that good education means much more than test scores, much more than school grades. For the younger students, especially, I'm thinking about preschool, kindergarten, and elementary, play is really important. Play is a big part of it. Are the kids getting outside? Are they getting recess? Are they getting physical activity? Those things are really important to learning, and they are really important to a good education and our kids learning and growing. So play is important. U.S. Department of Education, add that in your list. And I would say even for some of the middle school, high schools, like play can look different, but probably equally as important to a good education. Especially with our younger students in elementary school, homework is not important. So if you are concerned your kid is not getting a good education because they're not coming home with homework, guess what? The research says that homework is not all that important. I do believe it plays a part in the later grades, but yeah, let's not use homework as a way to gauge whether our kids are getting a good education. If your kid is engaged and excited, that can be a good indicator that they are getting a good education. That becomes a little bit more murky with middle school and high school, where there's this perceived apathy in our kids. So if your kid is in middle school or high school and not super excited about school, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not getting a good education. They're just going through a lot of changes and need some extra support and might not be happy about everything happening in the world and to themselves. And then this is the thing that I think is the most important thing about whether or not your kid is getting a good education. It's the quality of the teachers and the teaching, period. End of story. So if you are able to go inside a school and it comes down to the leadership. Is there really great leadership, building administration that are supporting the teachers, and then the teachers are supporting the students? That's a great indicator. If you have happy teachers, you have happy students. If you have supported teachers, you have supported students. So leadership can be that catalyst towards a really great education, and it can pivot the other way as well. But we don't want to talk about that. So something too, I want to think about like red flags. If you're looking at a school and your child's education, a major red flag is teacher turnover, and that's related to happy teachers, happy students, good education. If the school has a lot of teacher turnover, that is an indicator that your child might not be getting the best education. And that's really hard right now in the time of COVID and a pandemic, because there's a lot of turnover for reasons outside of what's happening inside a school. Also, another major red flag, if you as a parent or guardian are not welcomed into the school or your questions are not answered. Now, a caveat with that one, during a pandemic, there are different policies regarding visiting a school, so take that into consideration. But a sign of a good education is a school that's welcoming to parents and guardians. So the last thing I want to leave you with regarding this question about how do I know if my child is getting a good education, that you as a parent or guardian have a lot more power than you think. So take that, let it sit there for a little bit, let it sit there for a little bit, and know that if there is something, a question that you have, a pondering, or if you think maybe your child is not good at getting a good education, you have more power than you think. Talk to your administrators at your school, talk to other parents, think about other options for your child. Go see a classroom, go talk to teachers, go get some more information. Don't just sit on it, because our kids really only have one chance at loving school. They only have one chance at first grade, second grade, third grade. So make sure that they are getting the most out of their chance and their opportunity to learn and grow. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate any other ideas that you all have about how you define a good education. How do you know your child is getting a good education? Feel free to put them in the discussion thread, and I look forward to seeing you all next week in Ask an Educator. Keep the questions coming, and thanks so much for this week's question.